Everyone is welcome here, it's time to make new friends. Fill your Glencairn. Share a dram with the spirit of Edmonton.
Slancha, and welcome, whiskey brothers and sisters, and welcome to episode 71, the Canadian Whisky Journey's Whiskey Review. I'm Dolph, creator of the Canadian Whisky Journey, the president of the Alberta Scotch Club Society. Sorry, club. My wife's already correcting me. It's only the second line. And I'm your host here tonight. We're continuing our Canadian Whisky Journey with another installment of the Banff Whisky Experience Preview Series. It's a mini-series that focuses on the distilleries, distillers, owners, like this gentleman right here, that are definitely part of the masterclass and or the panel discussion that I mediate. And so what we have tonight is a treat. We're with Scott Coburn. He's the head distiller, Park Distillery in Banff. Welcome. Thank you, sir, for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Anytime. My pleasure. I'm going to be peppering you with questions, so it's more you. Do you have anything to drink in the background, or have you had enough at work today already?
Let me grab something.
Okay, I'm here to, well, not really push it, but here I am. And what I'm having, and this is before Scott's time, is this bottle right here, if we could see this. So I love the experimental series. Now, I've done two of these. I've done two reviews on both Triticales. And this one is the half cask number 3 char. And this is rye. This is all rye. So not Triticale, but rye. And I'm a big rye fan, which leads me into loving the Triticale. So
I got a pretty special whiskey that my buddy brought up from the States when he was visiting last week. It's the Willett Single Barrel Family Estate.
Nice. Beautiful. All right. Nice one. And, well, I like Willett. And, well, Pappy. I like Willett better than Pappy because it's the same juice and half the price. But
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so, you know what? I'm just gonna go a little bit of background. A little bit of research online tells me that you have a Bachelor in Science 2012, Bachelor in Mathematics 2015. That was the University of Colorado?
University of Utah.
So
bachelor's in chemistry for 2012, and then finished the mathematics degree in 2015.
All right. I'm a math teacher, and it's nice to see people in the business that love science. And we're seeing that more and more with the distillers, right? And distillery managers, they're becoming highly specialized. So you're a little bit ahead of your time, but you're leading the field now. Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people go the traditional science route and don't like the stuffy academic kind of atmosphere of work, and
then
diverge and go to distilleries.
Dive right into whiskey. Well, I'm okay with that myself. I think that's a good idea for everybody involved. You also started working at High West, so you were a distiller, not the head distiller, but it looks like you had that job while completing your math degree, correct?
Yeah, so I just had a couple classes to finish up to finish my math degree. So I think I did that towards the end of being a distiller, right before I became the production manager. Yeah. Just applied out of college after I worked a year in a lab doing like carbon nanofiber research, and it was kind of stuffy and boring, and saw the post for High West Distillery and immediately applied and ditched the lab for some rubber boots and a mechanic shirt.
That's all right. It sounds like fun. And I was trying to find a High West bottle back here, and I remember one with a rabbit. What was that called? Do you remember?
That's probably the Boo Rye.
Okay. Well, it would have been nice to have that as well. I don't have anything from Mythology Distilling, though. I don't think I've ever had a bottle from them. And that was your next job, right?
Yeah, so basically after High West, I think I was there for around 5 years. Was there to open up their new big distillery there for when they were acquired by Constellation Brands. Was just kind of ready for something different. Wanted a little bit more creativity. So then I was approached by some guys opening up a distillery out in Colorado, and that was Mythology Distillery. So I got to open that one up from the ground up and develop all their products. So it was a lot more craft style where we did a little bit of everything. So I was able to do a vanilla sugar rum, vodka from scratch, do 2 of my own blended whiskeys along with some barrel expressions on them, and then also dive into gin a little bit, which has kind of become a passion of mine as well.
Gins. And okay. And I didn't know that. And I'm thinking that's what led you to Park, because again, you're opening up another distillery just like you did previously. So that kind of leads them to you. But what led you to them?
Yeah, so I was approached by them initially. I was happy in Colorado. We had a lot of growth and movement planned. But I was approached and the offer just sounded too good to kind of turn down at that time in my life. Okay. And I wanted to come up to Canada, wanted to ski the mountains, see the big mountains. And then also being in a ski town and a tourist town, you have so many more people exposed to your brand. So it's really a great opportunity to grow the brand in a much more rapid fashion, which we're kind of seeing with Expansion Distillery, and being able to expand is something I always like. I like kind of the new changes to the process.
It wasn't the same thing in Colorado for you then?
It was, but we were smaller. We probably did similar volume in terms of packaged goods, but I took some of the skills I learned from High West, primarily blending, and cultivated my own blends. So we were able to scale much larger than what we actually produced, just based off of the blending component of the business.
All right. And so you go from ski town to ski town. Anything really change for you type thing, except for a different place in the mountains for you?
Picked up hockey since I've been up here, so that's been nice.
Nice. Excellent.
Pretty humbling experience. Not too much. Ski towns are the same, but this one, like in Colorado, I was living directly in Denver. So you're like an hour and 30 minutes away. It's similar to Calgary and Banff. Yeah. So being directly in the mountains and then working with the Park team has just been a great experience for me.
A bit different. All right. Well, I wrote questions for Scott before and asked him, but I'm gonna ask this anyways. What did you learn from your first 2 jobs that brought you to this job? Something that you're using directly at both High West and Mythology that you brought with you directly now. And then I'm going to ask you what's completely different. So I'm going to go both ways.
Yeah. So at High West, they were really ahead of their time in terms of their sensory analysis and how they would go about their blends. So I really took a lot of that information and implemented it into Park, and more so will be in the future. Part of the reason we're expanding is so we can get our whiskey program going and have much like a space that's more conducive towards that. So I'll showcase a little bit more of that going into the future. And then also the level of professionalism and structure that they kind of implemented into their processes and plant management. So that's what I mainly learned from High West. And then at Mythology, again, it was more of a startup. So you obviously don't have the same funding that you have at High West, which is similar to the startup game in Park. We're beyond startup in terms of our sales, but in terms of our structure, we're still very much a bootstrap distillery. So you kind of have to come up with more creative ways to solve solutions. Sometimes you don't have the money to just throw money at it and do the absolute premium fix. You just have to be a little bit more creative. So I learned a lot of that in Mythology and just actually took the time to build a product from concept all the way to bottle, which gave me good insight. Whereas High West, I was on the sensory panel and we had a sensory panel of 5. Really honed my skills, but never really had to do it from start to finish. So Mythology introduced me to that. So made me more comfortable when it comes to selecting barrels for Park that we want to bottle and sell, And then 2, strategy for when we have the new location and how to create a nice whiskey that will be a lasting whiskey and a lasting flavor that we can offer to our consumers.
Now, I guess what's the best part right now then? Is it building the new distillery, thinking about it? Did you have a hand in any of the kind of where they put whatever equipment in the physical plant itself? Did you have a say? Because that'd be kind of cool to be able to consult on that, right?
Basically, what I started with when I got up here for the new distillery was this is the footprint of the building. This is the shell of the building. Now divide it into rooms and fill it out with this budget as best you can and make it like a functional distillery. Yeah. So it was very exciting, stressful at times, obviously, but it's the fun aspect of it because it's something new and something I don't always get to do. So we actually I hand selected the equipment based off of what we had for the budget. So it's primarily going to be focused on whiskey and our whiskey process, but just the prospect of having space, which is at a premium in the Bow Valley. So actually having the space to stack barrels high, also like stage appropriately and work efficiently and be able to do blends and do things effectively is one of the major things I'm looking forward to there. But yeah, that aspect is one of my favorite parts about the job, definitely expanding the new distillery, but also the variety. Park has a variety of products, so I've gotten exposure to things that I've never done. I come from more of a straight distillation background, really grounded in whiskey and gin. So out here, I've got to do a whole bunch of barrel-aged cocktail products, the canned cocktails, keg cocktails. Okay. So the variety of everything we do keeps it fresh as well.
Are you going to have certain things at, let's say, the white spirits in one distillery and the whiskey in the other, or are you going to focus it all on the new distillery? And
we're going to focus mainly at the new distillery just because the space is going to be conducive to having an efficient workspace. Part of the issue with the ski town distilleries and small town distilleries is space is at such a premium that you don't have much of it. So similar at High West. At High West, our pilot setup was right at town ski lift from Park City. So you could literally ski into the distillery and restaurant, which is nice for visitors. Yeah. But when you're working, you don't have much space to actually operate and function. And it's similar at Park, where the location we are currently, I mean, you're talking maybe if you take into account equipment, you're probably like 300 square feet, 400 square feet of actual workspace. So bottling and doing stuff in there is just too hard. We kind of had the intermediate where we had a warehouse at Deadman's, which offered us more space to bottle and do distribution, but you still didn't have that space to really start a heavy whiskey program. So this new facility is really breaking ground on that whiskey program and really solidifying our focus in that avenue.
Nice. And here's some pictures. Sorry, that's you, and there's the barrel, but let's go to the room. So it's a good picture, by the way. They spent some time doing some pretty good pictures in the past. So
yeah, we have a great marketing team.
I don't think I can really do justice to your small space in here, though, because I'm just getting the stills, and then you get the restaurant, which is beautiful as well. Maybe that gives you kind of an idea about how small the room is in there, right?
Yeah, so it's pretty tight in there. It's just, if you want to lay down barrels, bottle, distribute, it's just a hard space to make it work. And also, you're dealing with the alley traffic, no forklift. Like the new places is going to be.
You're young. You're in good shape. You can lift those barrels, buddy. You're good. 200 liters. Well,
not that strong.
And maybe it'll be used for kind of the experimental stuff you just want to play with. I don't know. It just seems like a waste to kind of get rid of it because it's beautiful. And if you've ever been to Banff, you've been to Park, you've walked around. I'm talking to other people out there, you all obviously, but it's a nice. Well, it is cozy. So you get that cozy feel. You're surrounded by everything, but just seeing someone actually work in a distillery or brewery when you're in there, I don't know. It gives it a sense of authenticity. You know, they're making their own whiskey, but it's still kind of neat to have that extra element to it. So hopefully there's some type of plan. We'll see what's going on.
We really like to hone in on the visitor experience and really create like an interactive experience for our visitors. Right now, with our focus at that facility mainly being gin, we'll have like a gin wall and allow customers to do their own, like make their own gin and do their own gin infusion. So hopefully, once our whiskey program gets off the ground a little bit more, we can do something interactive with guests for whiskey. And then we always have the still for kind of an R&D still, because our new system is going to be 5 times as big as that still. So it's easier to run sample batches on that and keep the costs down a little bit.
I get it. Okay. It's just I don't know, the self that just wants it all to be magical and have everything going around you, as opposed to you who just wants to make it work and make it cheap, and without making it so hard on everyone around you. However, if I had all these elves and people working all around me, it just makes me happy. I don't know why. I don't know why. Let's go back to you, and you're stepping into the role. And so Matthew Hendricks, who you take over for, I'm wondering if he stuck around there for a while before he went to Cocktails on Tap by Hendo. Like, that was his baby that he created. Did he give you the time to actually pick his brain for a while, or was he out right away?
Yeah, so they parted ways with Hendo and Park parted ways before I arrived.
Okay.
So I didn't really have much kind of smooth transition phase, but fortunately I was left with a really nice team, really knowledgeable, passionate, and hardworking. So it didn't take too much to get acclimated to the new processes in the new distillery.
Well, you knew what you were doing in the first place. That helps out, right? But it's a small town. Have you seen him in town type thing? Do you talk to the guy ever? He seems really busy. So
yeah, I think he's busy. I haven't seen him too much.
Okay. I'm going to go back to kind of the history of it. So the Alberta government lifted the minimum 500,000 liter per year minimum in 2013. And because of that, 2 other distilleries come out first. So in Turner Valley, we've got Eau Claire, and they hire a lovely person there. And we're going to talk to her soon. And you're going to, well, you've probably already met her, but you're going to meet her on the panel, and you'll also meet her in the master class. And after they open, Calgary, Last Best from Calgary opens up, and you guys are the 3rd to open up in June 2015, I think, if I got the information down. So in December 2015, I read an article in CBC. It says that you sold 25,000 bottles up to that point in 2015. And I'm wondering if you have any sense of what type of bottles. Were they these little bottles, and were they going to Wine and Beyond in Calgary, or was it all your store downstairs that you're kind of selling everything from? And
yeah, so
in the city too. Walton.
Yeah, so obviously this was well before my time.
Yeah.
So what I gather from my conversations with Yanni, the operating partner of the business, basically they had the space and wanted to do something interesting with it. They had a nice trip to Park City. I think they were skiing and checking out distilleries because they had that in the back of their mind, where they kind of wanted to put a distillery in the space.
Okay.
And then they went to High West Distillery, oddly enough, and had a pretty magical experience. And they wanted to capture that kind of feel in Banff. And there's obviously direct parallels between Banff and Park City. So then they also had the advantage of having a portfolio of restaurants in Banff. So they knew they could supply their restaurants as well. So I think the bulk of those sales would most likely have been the restaurants owned by the ownership group. So probably a lot of vodka, I would assume. I wouldn't assume whiskey yet. And then a lot of retail store sales. So our retail store is sitting there right on Banff Ave, and you probably get 4 or 5 million people a year walking by that retail store. So it's a good outlet to move some product.
And you have to wait there to get into the restaurant too. So you're waiting, you just go into the store, you pick something up. It was smartly done. It makes sense. And they're part of
High West.
Was it? Okay. Yeah. I'd love to go. Is it Banff Hospitality Collective? That's what they're called, right? The whole group?
Yeah, so that's the ownership group, Banff Hospitality Collective. So they have like Three Bears, as you referenced later on the questions, Lupo, Hello Sunshine, a whole bunch of quality restaurants in Banff.
And the bowling alley, place I like to go best for beers. What's it called?
Yeah, they probably have the best selection in the Bow Valley, I'd say.
I think so. Is High Rollers?
High Rollers.
And if you're going to Banff and you want beer, that's the place to go. It's perfect. Cheap. Well, I shouldn't say that. Three Bears is great. It's beautiful there, but I like going down to High Rollers. Great pizza. Really, I don't know. I like a wide selection of beers, which they have really well. And and other people. Steven, how you doing, Steven? Thanks for joining. And he's been there too. And I'm going to see him in December 1st. Let's keep going with questions.
Awesome.
But okay, so that's why they opened up. They want to supply their other restaurants, which makes sense, and they're selling to portions of people walking up and down Banff Ave. But I'm wondering when it changed over time, when they decided that they needed to go into a new distillery, hire a guy like you that's opened a distillery already. When did that idea come in, and is it because they want to just branch out to Wine and Beyonds? Because I got all three of these. No, two of the three at Wine and Beyonds here in Edmonton. So they are branching out. They are. But was that the main reason for the new digs that you're helping create?
Yeah, I think what their goal originally was is they just saw how successful the business can be just based off of the local market. So Banff is a world-renowned destination, so it does a lot of the marketing and advertisement for the business naturally. You don't have to put many dollars in it if you have Banff, Alberta on your label.
Yeah.
So I think the plan in terms of expanding was just to provide more product and actually have a surplus, be able to produce a surplus of product to enter other markets so we can share our quality spirits with a larger population. And then the new distillery, whiskey has always kind of been one of the major goals. So we were kind of a victim of our own success to some extent. So all of our other products are selling so well in the Bow Valley and even in Edmonton and Calgary now and all of Alberta that our capacity is somewhat consumed servicing all those products. So the new distillery is really focused on being able to, again, have space as well as scaling up the still by 5 times and just having a kind of better process flow in order to really produce whiskey and gin. So then we can do interesting stuff on the park still if we need to, and just really free us up to build surplus and really hit other markets.
Let's talk about the whiskey. What type of whiskeys? So Triticale we have, rye I have here, but I'm wondering what other types you're thinking of. Do you have a single malt in there coming out kind of soon?
There's conversation. Scotch is one of my favorite style of whiskeys. Okay. And at High West, we actually dedicated a large portion of our production to single malt. We did like peated malt, tri malt, base malt. So
where did you get your peated malt? Because I don't know if I've had it, but it's ringing a bell.
Yeah, so we did a bunch of trials. I think we started with Bards initially, or Bairds in Scotland, and then I think we switched over to Simpsons. I think they had a nice peated malt expression that was a little bit softer on the peat. So we started off by using... Oh, say one more time, sorry.
Sorry. No, I shouldn't have cut you off. Keep going.
Yeah, so we started off by doing the production just on our little still, just because we didn't want to contaminate our milling equipment and everything with the peat. But then we realized it's pretty easy to clean out of the system over time, especially if you just chase it with base malt. So they really doubled down on that quite a bit. And that Simpson's peated malt is quite delicious. Comes across nice, clean smoke character coming through.
In Seattle, they've got malts there as well, so different place doing that. And sourcing locally for malt, not malt, but peated. So have you thought about getting peat anywhere?
Alberta? We have a pretty good relationship with the guys over at Red Shed. Okay. So, and they seem interested in kind of doing crazy stuff. So I imagine if we really wanted to push it and partner up and do some peated malt, we could probably get them to do some experimentation on their end.
That'd be fantastic. And I was there this summer at their open house. That was fun. They're great.
Yeah, I was meaning to try and make it up there, but I've just been slammed with the new distillery and whatnot. So with the new distillery, our primary focus initially is going to be rye and then a little portion of trit. When I think Canadian whiskey, I think rye. So I want to kind of do real clean style rye with predominantly new barrels initially. Okay. And then utilizing some of the new used barrels for other components. So I'm really into the blending where you try and create a flavor profile that is interesting to drink and transitions on your palate as you consume it. So that's kind of what excites me about the business. But that's not to rule out single malt at some point in time. Again, I'll always be a proponent of single malt just because it's my favorite style.
Nice. Let's go back to the rye. What type of taste profile are you looking at? Do you like the floral ryes? Do you like? Yeah, I like floral more than I like peppery.
I like floral. I like sometimes you can get these nice like botanical characteristics coming through from the rye, almost like gin botanicals coming off of them, a little dill and whatnot. So I like that. I like blending the young with the old too. So we have really good stock of some old smaller barrels that are going to drink. They're like 5-6 years old right now, but they'll drink closer to a 10-year if you blend it in on the back end. So you can do small blend backs of that portion onto the back end with some younger rye. So then you get the real spirit forward elements of the rye, as well as like the rich, chewy tannins that you get from older whiskey. So I'm really excited to play around with a little bit of that, but also have the space to actually do single barrel releases. It's a trend in the market for good reason. People like that. People like the uniqueness and the characteristics of a single barrel release.
I do. And I've been part of the SMWS Scotch Malt Whiskey Society for many, many, many years. So I like the single barrel thing. And that's what drew me to these as well. So all of these, they're single casks as well. They mention the cask in them. Help me out though. What's a half cask?
How many? So a half cask is just going to be a smaller barrel. Half of a barrel. So like standard barrel that we typically use would be 200 liters. Yeah. A half cask is closer to 113 liters. Okay. So basically by shrinking the cask, you're increasing the surface area to volume ratio. Yep. And by doing that, you're going to impart a lot more wood character. But it also kind of accelerates the process so you don't get all the redox chemistry that's going on, the oxidative reactions. Fortunately, we have these half casks, but they've also been sitting long enough to have a lot of that redox chemistry. So they just drink a little bit older than the age statement on them.
Well, my wife was I've got a business card with the Alberta Scotch size. So I've got all the different casks on the back, and I've never seen the half cask. You get the quarter cask, which I understand, and the octaves that we're dealing with. I just didn't know about the half cask. So did you get those specifically made for you, or did you get them from, I don't know?
Barrel providers will make them. I think all of ours are from Barrel Mill. Okay. Again, something micro distilleries oftentimes do in order to rush the aging process. But if you actually have time to sit on them and you're not rushing it, it can yield some nice, really tannin-rich whiskey. So when I say like it will be a nice blending component, it might be a little rich on the back end for a lot of people's palate to be like completely a balanced whiskey. I still find it very delicious and interesting to drink. But if you blend that in with, say, a 4-year rye that comes from a full cask, you'll create layers in that product.
Let's go to Triticale, because you told me before we started this. So this one right here was you. You didn't distill it, but you picked it from the barrel, and you were the one making the decisions if you were going to chill filter it or color. Well, yeah, obviously you don't need the color. It's going pretty well with that. But what do you think of Triticale? Because I'm liking it more and more and more, tell you the truth, because about 6 months ago, I wasn't a big fan. But I don't know if my palate's maybe acclimatized to it a little bit more, but I'm liking it more. The softness of it with the mouthfeel, but I'm still getting my rye kick that I love. So I want to know your perspective.
Triticale comes across as a more approachable rye whiskey. So it's almost, you get all those nice caramel and sweet notes up front that you'd usually get from a wheat whiskey. And then the spice is a little bit more subdued on the mid to back palate. And then you still get that nice wood character coming through. So I'd say it'd be a nice introduction for someone who says, oh no, rye, I can't drink rye. Triticale almost smooths that out and is able to open that door for a lot of people. I was similar to you. I was kind of Triticale. This kind of seems like a weird product. Maybe we can sell it because it's unique, but I think it creates a very nice whiskey, and it is defined enough and separate between wheat and rye, where I think it really has a place in the market.
Well, it's closer to rye than wheat for me. The only thing I'm really getting is the mouthfeel and the caramels that you get up front, like you were saying. But this is a number 3. It's a number 3 char on this one. It's a full cask, and it was brand new American oak. So I was picturing getting the caramels and the vanillins anyways, regardless. But so yeah, I'm getting more rye than wheat in my perception, in my mind. But yeah, the mouth feels all wheat.
Yeah, the mouth feels pretty wheat. And again, I think on a rye, I feel a much more building intensity on the spice character too. And this one kind of tones it down a little bit.
Well, I'm pretty happy with these. And right after I tried the first one, I tried to get my hands on every possible exploratory series that you guys had. And I've got 3, and I think you have 8 or had 8 at one point in time. So I tried to get friends out there to scour different things and see if they had any and try to send me some so I could do a tasting with my Alberta Scotch Society people, but it's not happening, so I decided to open the other one up. So now I'm thinking 100% right. That's okay. 3 different ryes.
Some corn whiskeys out there. We partnered with Duty Free in the Calgary airport and did a bourbon release. We just called it Canadian whiskey because corn whiskey doesn't sound that great, and obviously can't call it bourbon. So we did that release and sold out of that in a couple months.
And it is popular too. So Bridgeland Distillery in Calgary, and I worked with them a little bit, and their bourbon that they sell, and as soon as they put it out in cask strength, it just disappears. Just bang. People love it. So, and which is a little bit funny because people used to make fun of Canadian whiskey a little bit in how much corn was in it, as opposed to the rye, because they say, oh, there's no rye in it at all. It's all corn. And then people started complaining about the corn. And now when people have the chance to have a lot of corn in their whiskey, they're loving it a lot. So it's funny to see how people are kind of changing a little bit over time.
Yeah, the ebbs and flows of the business. I mean, High West's entire business model was based off of rye not being popular and then rye exploding in popularity.
And well,
bourbon's day in the sun right now. I think bourbon beat Scotch for the most popular whiskey in the world, didn't it?
Did it?
I
Not
think
in my mind, but maybe.
I could be just blowing smoke, so someone's gonna fact check me for sure.
That's okay. You've got a bigger connection to the States. So my bourbon love is there. I love bourbon. I like rye more than bourbon, but I do like Scotch more than them all. Canadian whiskey, though, is my number 2.
Ah,
All the
nice.
difference. And I've been tasting so many divergent types of whiskeys from all the micro distillers now throughout Canada. I'm in love with it because it's so different. And yeah, I'm getting a lot. So happy, really happy with how things are continuing. Get back to the distillery. One last question before I ask you like specifics about the new distillery. How much time are you spending going back and forth now between distilling and setting up the new distillery?
So currently I don't operate the still all that much. I have 2 distillers on staff. We got protocols that they follow, and then we just perform sensory on anything. And if anything's diverging in flavor or any issues are arising, we troubleshoot and make sure we solve it. So my focus primarily is, setting up the new distillery and just managing a little bit higher level and making sure we're guaranteeing our QC and putting out the best quality product we can.
All right. Good to know. Good to know. When's the new distillery going to be completed? Because
So
I've been hearing about it for a while. So
exciting times. We're actually hoping to get building occupancy early next week. So once building occupancy is done, we can start hooking up all the equipment. We already got it staged in there, ready to be plumbed and hooked up and have electrical lines run to it. So we're hoping to be functional and operational early next year.
Nice. Okay. Banff Whiskey Experience next year. Maybe you'll have a little tour going through it because that happened in the past. I think 2019. You weren't here yet, but that was something because they're really involved with the Banff Whiskey Experience. And I think that was one of the master classes. People actually went there, had the tour, tried the different whiskeys from the barrels, which is always fun. So I'm hoping for that.
Like a very large and massive space, which would be excellent for a tour.
I like it. And my favorite part of tours is when you see someone go up there with a whiskey thief climbing up 3 or 4 different barrels to get something unique from the top that they think they had or want to have. That's the fun part of it for me. Let's go leaders wise. So again, the old Alberta government limitations was 500,000 liters. Will you ever get to that point, do you think? Is that like 2-3 years worth of production or more than that for you?
So I did some calculations. At capacity, if we're doing whiskey, like primarily focused on whiskey, we're talking like 25,000 LAA.
Okay.
So those numbers are so abstract. We came across this at High West too, where the category for micro distillery in the U.S. was 250,000 9-liter cases. So I think Bullet technically would have been considered a craft distillery at that point. So we're a long way from that 500,000 and having to worry about that.
Okay, you're good. You're rolling. What do you spend most of your time distilling, or your guys spend most of the time distilling right now? Because I don't think you're laying down whiskey or rye right now, because I'm guessing a lot of it's the vodka, the gins that are going on, and which are really fun. You go up there and you sit on the patio. That's my favorite spot upstairs, overlooking Banff Ave, and you have your flight. And if you're a whiskey guy like me, you don't really get to try flights of other things all that often. So you guys lend yourselves to that really well. And I think that still outsells your whiskey though, right?
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, like right now our whiskey program is purely single barrel releases. So we probably do 6 of those a year at most. we could sell all of our whiskey and be confident that we'd sell all of our whiskey, but we wouldn't have much confidence in being able to replace it. So the way I view it is our current supply has much more value as a blending component for future whiskey. So now I can lay down a whole bunch of whiskey at 3 years. And then when I do creative blends with some of our older stuff, I can make that whiskey drink much more interesting than a 3-year whiskey. And then we can have a sustainable product that we can release and keep rolling. So that being said, we still need to produce something that people want to drink and pay the bills. So a lot of our focus right now has been on gin. So we have our classic Alpine gin that is always selling quite a bit. And then we just released a new, more floral gin. It's called the Flora and Fauna. So that was fun developing that and producing that. And then we do, again, a lot of vodka. And then we did a fair bit of Triticale whiskey distillations, actually. So I think the plan is to lay those down in some of those rye half casks, use half casks. So really layer that rye spice by using rye barrels to impart that flavor on the Triticale. So I'm interested to see how that turns out. Then the new distillery primarily is focused on whiskey. So a lot of the reason we haven't progressed our whiskey side of the business is just based off of space constraints. And again, having to service all of our other products so our restaurants don't run out.
And since you were working there with the whiskey, I'm wondering, and you alluded to this before, so who's mashing for you? Are you doing that yourself, or were you getting someone like Three Bears, which are not even 2 blocks away, like a block and a half away behind? Or if you go out the back door, kind of go diagonal to them, you can get to them pretty quickly. So have they ever mashed for you, or it's just all you? Because
it's just all us right now. Just we have the mash tanks. We have the grain. So it's easy enough for us to do it right now. We've talked about doing potential collaborations with Three Bears and doing some of their beers and turning it into single malts, which I think would be interesting. So once we have the new space and kind of have a powerhouse distillery to provide juice for all of our products, we can start playing around and having more creativity, or having a more creative space to entertain some of these like partnerships and collabs, like doing a single malt with Three Bears.
Well, I'm hoping for that. And I'm also hoping for maybe you get they get a couple of your casks and they put their porters in that, and they get some imperial porters or some barley wines into your casks, and then you getting theirs back and kind of playing back and forth with that, because I enjoy that. I don't know if you think it's too, I don't want to say childish, too fun, too not
too exciting, too awesome.
It's just for me, it's fun. I love it.
Yeah, I really like whiskey finished in stout barrels. I think it adds a nice texture, a nice creaminess, and like kind of toasted notes to the product. So we've definitely talked about that. Again, it comes down to space constraints right now, which has been the major motivation, just to build our own place a little further outside of town.
What do you do for the wood? I'm guessing you're in charge of ordering the wood and thinking about what you want for the future. And I'm guessing you're given a budget and you're thinking about the different types of barrels. Now, do you go specific places to check out barrels, or do you have someone kind of come to you, just say what's available type thing?
So base barrels, our model's based off of us mainly purchasing new wood for the bulk of our whiskey and then reusing those for future products. Like similar to us using the rye whiskey barrels for our Triticale whiskey that we produced this year in order to impart interesting flavors and create a blending component. So I know Canadian whiskey caught a lot of flack in the past because the regulations are somewhat loose on Canadian whiskey, but that's also a big opportunity in terms of what you can actually produce and still have it categorized as a whiskey. So I'm excited to be able to play with some of the used barrels and using those, blending light whiskeys with kind of more American straight style whiskeys,
Okay.
In order to really capture some decent flavor profiles. So with our primary wood, we're mainly sourcing from ISC, and then we're doing 3 char and 4 char. And then again, once we progress further, we'll start using some of our old barrels with new product in order to create more and more components. And then with this new facility, one of my priorities is to create a finishing line. So I think that is one of the more interesting things you can do pretty quick to a whiskey to impart good flavor to it and really play with different flavors, is using a wine cask or a stout cask, like you mentioned, even gin barrels. Past distilleries, I've blended or added rye whiskey to gin barrels.
Okay.
So the gin botanicals from that barrel actually pair quite nicely with like the rye botanical kind of flavor that you can get.
Okay.
And you really get nice products coming up from that. So I'm a big fan of single barrels and kind of select kind of interesting releases. And I think one of the easiest ways, especially for a craft distillery where people don't want to wait 10 years for you to produce something interesting all the time. One of the best ways is to take an interesting blend and hand select a barrel that you think will pair nicely with that original base flavor profile. So
you have to have those barrels available, right? It's just, how do you have such an array that you just, or do you buy just 3 or 4 really unique barrels and just hope that you can figure something out when they get to you, type thing?
Yeah, so you kind of, once you're ready and you have some product that you're ready to do something interesting with, you just see what is kind of out there on the market. So there's barrel brokers. They can be hit or miss, but sometimes you can find a good one that has some really good fresh wine barrels. Something I like to do in Colorado when we were still small is we partnered up with a vineyard.
Okay.
And we'd actually give them some whiskey barrels for their wine, and they'd in turn give us some wine barrels. So we could get them super fresh, and they were really keen on working with us. They wouldn't use sulfites in order to act as a preservative. They just do argon in there, so an inert gas, and bung it and ship it. And we'd basically be filling that wine barrel 3 days after it had been drained. So we're hoping to set up the same kind of thing. So with us being a large force in the restaurant business, we have some good relationships with BC vineyards. So we're hoping to sample some of those barrels and really get some fresh barrels for our whiskey. That, and then, yeah, just sometimes you just want to find an interesting rum barrel and throw some corn whiskey in it, or throw some rye in it and part those rich fruity notes.
Nice. Okay. Well, and you can, because the Okanagan's 6-8 hours away from different things. And with all the restaurants that you guys have a link with, and the vineyards that you, and I'm assuming you have relationships with specific vineyards that you're buying just their product. Makes sense, right? The casks are there.
Yeah, so it's a massive opportunity for us. And again, one of the reasons we haven't tackled it is just space constraints. So as soon as this new facility is up and running, that's like an afternoon work, a day's work for me to fill a couple wine barrels. It's easy enough to execute, and it really creates a nice product, especially with a rye. Nothing pairs better with a nice rye than a jammy, fruity wine. So you really get that nice mulled wine character coming through.
Well, I'm looking forward to that. Holy cow. Nice. Last question. You have, let's say you have unlimited funds. No one has that. But let's say you could do whatever the hell you want. What would the next step for you be? What's the whatever hell you want type thing? Let's say it's your 10th anniversary there. They're giving you carte blanche to do whatever the hell you want. What are you doing?
$1 million worth of funds.
Or 10 million. Whatever the hell you want to do, you get to do.
Whatever I want to do. All right. I'd finish Exshaw Distillery. I'd throw in 3 more fermenters, take our whiskey program up to 12,000 or 1,200 barrels a year. And then I'd go out and source some really rare, unique blending components.
Okay.
Some like 15-year-old Kentucky bourbons, some old Canadian rye light whiskey, some like 45-year-old Canadian rye light whiskey. Then I'd take that and create an interesting blend with our current lineup.
Okay.
And try and create a real nice.
You know who that sounds like? That sounds like Little Book.
Yeah, I guess
that's what you're doing with Little Book, and he's got unlimited funds. I think
I'm Fred Doe reincarnated. I guess
there you go.
I can't say that. We got to edit that out. I think I might burn right now.
Oh no, it's fine. It's good. Well, I've got all the Little Books. I just need the newest Little Book, and he did some like 42-year-old Canadian whiskey in there. He has to have access to anything and to be able to do what you want because Dad's taking over the business, or he's running the business right now. One day it'll be yours, but you get to be creative. I think that would be kind of a fun job. I gotta say.
I'll add one more note on top of it. I'd take a really unique rare wine barrel and throw it in there to add a little bit more texture to it.
Okay, so you're gonna do like Brookladdy. So you would have had a great time at Brookladdy when it first started, and you had all those wine barrels to play with. So
yeah, Brookladdy seemed like the playground for a while.
Yeah, well, it still is. I'm looking at some there. Maybe that's my next dram before we go. All right, kind sir. I gotta thank you for all your time. I appreciate this. We're gonna see each other, and for 2 of them. So the master class where we're doing Alberta Bond. So hopefully you've got something picked out for our 30 to 35 people in there that's bond strength, that's 50 plus, something that they've never had before. And and when we're in the panel, it's all about the past, the present, and the future, and we kind of delved into that today. So it'll be just a little bit more of that, and it'll be all shiny and sparkly with all these videos and pictures and stuff. But this is fun for me. I like to get to know people a little bit. So.
Yeah, this is great. I'm looking forward to the whiskey experience.
And December 1-2, I'm there on the Friday, and hopefully I get to see you right away. But thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you, Dolph.
Cheers to you, kind sir. Appreciate your time. And I'll talk to everyone out there. Thank you very much. Subscribe, all that, click things, and we'll be happy. I'll see a lot of you that are on here now, and in the next couple of weeks, I'll see you in Banff anyway. So, but enjoy your time. Enjoy this. Thank you, Scott, and we're going to talk to you all later. Cheers now. And cheers.